all of that was in my head when Sadie started asking about being evaluated again. April is over. And let's face it, April can kind of be an emotionally fraught month because there's a lot of awareness out there, and a lot of that awareness can feel really negative. And so it can be a really intense time. And this year has been very intense for other reasons for pretty much the entire world. I think that if you told any of us a year ago that this is what April 2020 was going to be like, we wouldn't have believed it. And so I know, at least for me, a lot of my plans for April sort of went out the window. Usually I sort of try to have April scheduled and planned out. And this year that didn't really happen. And that's kind of where I am at the moment. Today, inspiration struck in the form of a comment. And I try to read comments usually in the best possible light because it's so hard to read tone on the internet. And especially in spaces like this, tone can be confusing. When videos start to blow up, it can be really odd because it's almost always older videos. And for me, that means that they're usually videos from before I was diagnosed. It's definitely going to be a video from before Paul was diagnosed. And in this case lately, it's the video of Sadie's diagnosis that has sort of been picking up steam all of a sudden, which is a good thing. That is one of my favorite videos. It's probably, I like it a lot more than some of my other videos that have gotten more popular over the last couple of years. And honestly, the comments on that video, by and large, are probably my favorite comments on any video that I have ever made. I've loved sharing those comments with Sadie. But I got one comment last night and I woke up to it in the middle of the night and it got me thinking. And right away I started sort of putting together a new video in my head. And so the comment, some parts, the second sentence is a little bit hard to understand the meaning, so I'm going to go off of how I understood it, and I hope I didn't misunderstand it. So the comment was, why would she have to save her allowance for an autism evaluation? Also, she missed out on years of therapy where she could have even have never obtained a DX. And I'm going to read that with diagnosis. Also, she missed out on years of therapy where she could have even have never obtained a diagnosis. So, and first, just addressing the first part of that comment, why would she have had to save her allowance for an autism evaluation? So, in the video where Sadie finds out she's autistic, after the doctor's appointment, I give her the news. She is super excited. And then we go back and Sadie and I talk about it, and I explain how the reason Sadie was tested was because she came to me and she asked to be tested. And when she came to me and asked to be tested, she had said that if she needed to, she would save her allowance, she would pay for it herself, that it was something that was really important to her, and that I had told her, no, that's okay, we'll talk to your doctor, we'll get a referral, and we'll do this. So the point of the story of her saving her allowance was really to show how she'd taken the initiative, how it was something that was important enough to her that she was willing to save up for it because she didn't understand that our insurance would pay for it. That was pretty much it. I thought that it was really sweet, and honestly, I was really proud of her that this was that important to her. Yeah, that was the whole point of that story. It wasn't that we were making her pay for it, which was pretty clear if you watched the sentence past the sentence where I said she asked if she needed to save up her allowance. But I just wanted to clarify that. The second sentence is a little more complicated. So I'm reading this as, also she missed out on years of therapy where she could have even have never obtained a diagnosis. So I think that the person's just saying that, is just pointing out that because she was diagnosed so late, she missed out on years of therapy. I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, because of probably autocorrect. It felt like when I read it again in the middle of the night when it came in, because I could not sleep last night. The worst part of anxiety for me is that after years of being a really, really heavy sleeper and sleeping all night long, I am awake all the time now, and it's very irritating. I took this to mean the person was pointing out that she should have been diagnosed earlier and pointing out all the therapies she'd missed. And my response was, when she was younger, she did get both speech and OT. And I talked before about how I did wish we'd actually started speech sooner than we did. And we tried to get speech for years and danced around with insurance and our school district when we lived in the city because we were homeschooling. And the secretary told us at our school district when we lived in the city that no, she couldn't get speech at the school, which wasn't in fact true. And it took us a couple of actual years to get her speech in our school district. And finally I talked to the right person. And once I finally talked to the right person, it was a matter of days before it was set up. And they were basically said that I must have just talked to the wrong person at the school. Really, it can just be a matter of talking to the right person. But the thing was, that first time I believed the wrong person. So we had our insurance telling us to go to the school. And when I called the school was saying no, they wouldn't give her speech, that they didn't do that. Which wasn't true, but I also didn't know as much as I know now. And so I didn't push harder than that. I believed it. But yeah, she did have speech starting when she was 6. I do wish it had been earlier. And she had OT starting earlier because our insurance did cover the OT when it wouldn't cover the speech. But what I didn't talk about here, and what I don't know that I've mentioned before, is that there were actually 2 other times when I tried to have her evaluated when she was younger, much younger. The first time was shortly after Maggie was diagnosed. And so Maggie was 3, which means Sadie was probably around 5. And Maggie's social worker at the time thought that there was a fair chance that Sadie was also autistic. And so she did the paperwork and sent her through for an evaluation. And I remember that ADOS so clearly. It was the type of ADOS where they had the little book. There's a little book and a bunch of other little toys. Different than the ADOS that Maggie has and the ADOS that Tessie has. That is for littler kids, with the frog that goes ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. With the baby doll that takes a bath. No, the baby doll that takes a bath is much littler. Then the birthday party, then the rocket, then the dog that yips. Anyways, the little book. So the little book is going to play a big part of this story, because there was this bedtime story that I used to tell the girls, and it was pretty fantastic. It had 3 parts. It was always exactly the same. And I told it to them for a couple of years. Every night I would go out, and in it was about 2 little girls who lived in a castle, and they leave their castle and they go through the woods. They meet with the big bad wolf and they jump on unicorns and they ride away from him, and then they climb a mountain where they meet a dragon who helps fly them up over the mountain to the ocean, where they have a picnic and they eat, I think it was raspberries next to the Silver Sea. And then it just goes on and on. It involves riding giant tomatoes down to a lemonade lagoon where they go swimming in different colors of lemonade, and then they go to a candy forest. It was very imaginative and the girls loved it, and it was the same every single night, and it wasn't really like any storybook story. We got to the ADOS and they gave her all the toys. And when they asked her to play, Sadie told that story word for word, the way that I would tell it to her every single night. And it seemed like that was pretty much the confirmation that she was not autistic, because she had this imagination. But it was really like a script. I mean, she knew the story. She knew the story that I told so well. And they asked a few questions. I remember one of the questions was like, well, how do you feel? When do you feel sad? And she was like, when I get in trouble, I feel sad. And they were like, yes, that's right. A few years later, it came up again. At every single doctor's appointment she had, we would be asked. It was even written in her chart. I saw up until like last year, it was still written in her chart, autism spectrum disorder. I asked her doctor about it, and her doctor, who is a developmental pediatrician, said, oh, is that in there? I was like, yes. I mean, I don't think it's wrong. I was just surprised to see it in here because she's never formally been diagnosed. And she took it out. And I was sitting there like, And so then a few years later, they sent her back again to be evaluated. And this time we didn't make it past the social worker, because with our insurance at that point, we had to do the social worker visit first. And the social worker had to approve it before we could go on for the actual test. And so this time I got the call from the social worker. The social worker said that someone remembered her who had met her at some point, who worked there, and they talked to her for maybe 5 minutes at one point. They were certain she wasn't autistic. And she said, so do you want to come in here and waste your time and my time? And we'd been waiting for 6 months for this appointment. And I said, please, just see her. And she said, so you're going to waste my time and your time? I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, please just see her. And so we went there, and the questions were like, does the child repeat the same things over and over again? And she was sitting there telling the same joke over and over and over again. At this point she was like 7. And she's like, no. And she checks the box, no. And I actually complained to some of the therapists we knew who went in and had a meeting at the agency, and she denied everything. That had never happened, that the things she'd said she hadn't said, which she had, of course. And apart from this, I've met this social worker separately in other situations where she's been extremely helpful, really, really nice. Maybe it was just a really bad day. Maybe it was just early in her career. I don't know. Everybody has off days. Those were the first 2 evaluations. We didn't even get past it. She also told me, she said, I've had children who've been diagnosed at the University of Michigan, and they come in here and I have to tell their parents that and she said that they don't have autism. Of course, she wouldn't have said they're autistic. And I was just sitting there like, I mean, you're not really qualified to say that. And she told me that if she didn't have more than a 50% delay, she wouldn't send her on anyway, so it didn't matter. All of that was in my head when Sadie started asking about being evaluated again, because I know how high her hopes were and how she had learned so much, and she was so confident in wanting to know and in feeling like this was her. I mean, I know that feeling too. It was how I felt, but I was so afraid that we were going to go through that again. It's different when you're a girl or a woman who's autistic. It's different. The standards are different. Unless you go to someone who knows women and girls on the spectrum, who's actually good at this, who knows the signs, who knows what we're like, your chances of being diagnosed are just so skewed. If you're not very verbal or you're nonverbal, then yeah, you're probably going to get that diagnosis like Maggie and Tessie did when they were little, because they had the signs that were so obvious that it couldn't be messed up. I mean, it would have been really hard to be messed up because they were not speaking when they should have been speaking. And they were climbing everything and breaking everything and doing backflips off of things and dangling from one arm from clothing rods, and they were missing milestones in huge ways and doing things that were very hard to miss. If your level of needs is lower, if you're able to watch other people and copy them and put on that mask and kind of slide into social situations, the chance of actually finding out I fit in here too, that's me too, is much lower. And I'll admit, when I read the comment and it said she'd missed so much therapy, all I could think was, thank goodness she did, because I wouldn't change anything about her. You know, I'm dealing with my regrets right now about all of the things that I would do differently with the girls. There are different choices that I would make with the therapies that they've been in. And I'm glad that Sadie didn't go through therapies that taught her to suppress her stims, because she is proud of them. And I wouldn't want to put her in situations that tried to suppress that or change that at all in any way. So no, I don't regret Sadie's late diagnosis, because she did get speech and OT, and I wouldn't change a thing and add any more therapies in. She had writing therapy. I wouldn't want to add in anything else. And I think that her finding out herself, her wanting to know, her advocating for it herself is better than it happening any other way, honestly. It was a good process. That is it for today. If you like this video, we'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you'd hit subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.